So the aims of the webinar, so what we want to do today, instead of having a series of presentations, we want to actually have a sort of a dialogue. So we brought people in with different perspectives, so physio, psychology, dance, lived experience, to sort of share those perspectives together. We want to deepen this understanding of this theme of the fear of moving when living with pain and how you might enhance the joy of moving. And also assessing the role that dance and movement practices might play. And also we want this to be a public event and connect with a wider range of people. So we're really curious about your comments as well. So the theme, I suppose, it came up a lot when we were looking at this, movement and pain, that people experience a lot of fear around movement and wanting to protect their body from further pain. But at the same time, they were being encouraged to move, to stay active for their own kind of physical well-being and also their mental health. So when you have a lot of pain, how do you motivate yourself to move? And another thing that came up was around the idea of that actually some meaningful activities for people who live with pain are painful, and they continue to do them because they give them joy, whether that's skateboarding or dancing or whatever. And also, yes, then I just had a question around, can dance somehow help to explore this fear of moving in space, but also bringing in joy? So I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, Bernie.
I think you've kind of summed it up really beautifully. And I know when I first came to work alongside Emma, I wasn't really sure kind of what she was meaning by dance or what dance meant. And one of the most lovely experiences I've had has been learning that all sorts of movement can be considered to be dance. And even though I'm somebody lucky enough to not have chronic pain, the sense of ease that you can get from joining in some of the movement and dance activities is just really tremendous. So I think one of the things that we want is for people to have an enjoyable experience, to perhaps go away feeling that they've learned something, even if it's only something really tiny, but to be safe in how they engage with the ideas and the activities.
Brilliant, thank you. That's great. So to that end, now we're going to do a short poll before we introduce the panel members. So I'm going to ask Kozer to start the poll. And this is for participants to join in, and the question is actually about your primary reason for participating. So obviously a poll is limited in the circumstances, so it's, to be treated lightly. But the question is, my primary reason for participating in this event is as a person living with pain, a healthcare professional, a dance artist, or other. And obviously, people are a mix of those things. So if you want to comment on that, you can in the chat. If you want to put in other, that's fine. So we've lots of replies coming in there. So I'll let that run for a moment while we bring in our panel members. So I'm going to invite in all of our panel members. So we're just going to take a moment to get their cameras on, and I can introduce them while that's going. So we have, Eline and Harbinder. There's Pete, and we have Ross, I hope, coming up soon. There we are. So welcome to all our panel members. We're really interested to hear your different perspectives. So I'm just going to do a brief intro before I close the poll. Who will I start with? So who do I see first? Eline Kieft is a previous colleague of mine, a dance person who has trained in dance, but also facilitator of people in movement runs her own organization called Clover Trail, which explores people's health and well-being. And Eline is also someone who has experience of living with persistent pain. And then next, I can see Harbinder, who is a psychologist in background, working at the University of Warwick in clinical trials, has been doing a lot of work around persistent pain management, things like CBT and mindfulness, and also has expertise in the communication between patients and healthcare professionals, and has recently won an award, I saw, for working with people with chronic pain. And next we have Pete. So Pete, as many people will know, is a pain advocate who's been writing about pain, promoting self-management and supported self-management, and he runs the Pain Toolkit, which has all sorts of resources there, a booklet, but also the Pain Toolkit Cafe, and interviews and webinars. So welcome, Pete. Thank you. And obviously Pete has lived experience of pain as well. And then Ross Armstrong is a physiotherapist working at the University of Cumbria. And Ross actually is very experienced in working with dancers, especially with dancers' injury and pain. So did a lot of research around that, but also worked a lot with sports people. And also has experience of working with people with fibromyalgia as well. And then finally, we've Lisa Dowler, who we're going to talk with a bit more later. But Lisa is a dance artist. Lisa was working in Liverpool at Edge Hill University before and is running the Small Things Dance Collective. She's worked a lot in Alder Hey Children's Hospital using movement and dance with young people, and has done research papers around how that supported people with pain. So we'll turn off Lisa's video for now, so you don't have to sit there looking at us, because we'll talk to you later. So yes, could we close the poll then and see what the results are? Who is participating? So attendees are now viewing poll results. So we have actually a fairly even spread, which is amazing, of people living with pain, healthcare professionals, dance artists, and other. So that's fantastic. So I'll have a look in later with Sarah at the chat to see what you've said about that. But I'm actually really pleased we got such an even spread, and especially during the pandemic, because I know a lot of healthcare professionals are really under pressure at work. So thank you for joining us. So I'll close that poll now. Okay. So yes, so I'm just going to change my view of the speakers so I can see everyone there. So I've talked a lot now, so I'm gonna hand over to you guys. So I think my basic question is, you know, when you see this title, Chronic Pain, the Fear and Joy of Moving, what is your response to that, and from your perspective? So I think if we could start with Pete, if that's okay, what comes to mind when you see that title, Chronic Pain, the Fear and Joy of Moving? How does that relate to your work?
Well, good morning, Emma, and good morning to everyone else watching. It's a bit of a funny one, really, because there's two extremes, really, you know, the fear of movement and the joy of movement. I know for a lot of people with pain, as I did back in the day, movement was very, very scary. And because, you know, when you have pain, you want to protect yourself. So, and when you start to move, it starts to hurt. So we sort of learn this, you know, this movement equals harm, movement equals pain. So what we do, we become very, very protective of it. But it wasn't until I think I learned, I didn't really understand. So back in the day, I'm going back into the 1990s, so it's a bit life was a bit more black and white, I guess, like, you know. But I know it's improved now with healthcare professionals, but I was just sort of told to do 10 of these exercises, 10 of them, 5 of these or whatever. you know, and you get up to sort of 5 or 6, and you're thinking, and the pain shoots up, and you think, oh, I need this like I need another pair of earrobes, you know. So you're thinking, well, this can't be right. Exercise equals more pain, you know, or movement equals pain. So you become very guarded. But it wasn't until I went on a pain management program in '96 where they talked about, they got us moving, but they did it in a way, in a pace way. So it wasn't like do 10 of these, da 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 da. It was about, well, what do you think you can do? Then chop it in half, like, you know. So if you could do, you know, I don't know, 10 repetitions or something, they encourage you to cut it back to like 5 and then increase it 1 a day. So then I learnt back then that actual keeping active, stretching, exercising was actually doing me good, because actually the stretching, exercising and movement and whatnot was actually decreasing my pain, because now I was exercising the joints and stretching things and whatnot. So actually things started to decrease my pain, and then I didn't need to take any, you know, I got to a point after a year I didn't need to take any pain meds. So and then, but I was like, you know, like the little kid in Forrest Gump, like, you know, when he's running along with all them calipers and whatnot. You know, when I started to get moving, mate, I was buzzing. You know, I was gone. You know, I was dancing and stuff like that. But I did everything in a pacing way. And I think that's one thing that's not taught in the pain from healthcare professionals about pacing. I don't think they actually understand what pacing means in pain psych management.
Okay, that's great. So actually then it's sort of not just about getting back into moving, but actually knowing how much to do and the intensity of it.
You need a plan, you know. It's you know, coming back from where, you know, listen, you know, pain doesn't just, it affects the body, it affects the mind as well. You know, we got a lot of fear going on here, you know, so it's about belaying that fear, getting your confidence back, because that's what pain does. It actually decreases people's confidence. They go from can-do people to becoming can't-do people. So it's about building that up. It's a little bit like learning to drive, you know, when you get in the car for the first time, you're nervous as hell. But when you've moved off and stopped a couple of times, think, oh, this ain't so bad, you know, and your confidence goes up and etc. like that. So, but I love, you know, to me, movement to me is, you know, it's great. I love it. I've been in a, well, they'll tell you, if you ask their dudes down in Australia and Sydney, I was at their gala ball, and I was like a wild man of ball, man. You know, I was rocking and rolling and whatnot. And I've even been in a rap video dancing. You know, I mean, that's how much I like movement. To me, movement is great. It's life, and you know, I really enjoy it.
So you've got to the point now where you can feel joy in moving. Then,
yeah, you know, I stretch and exercise every day. You know, all the while I'm doing that sort of stuff, I'm, you know, it keeps all my pain levels down. You know, when I finished here today, I'm gonna pop down to the post office down Manning Tree where I live, and post of that. That'll be exercising, movement, etc. It's a nice sunny day here in Essex, you know. So I don't fear movement. I don't fear, you know, exercise anymore. To me, it keeps me alive, keeps all my pain levels down. And you know what? I just, as I said, I don't have to take any pain meds. That to me is a winning combination.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Pete. So I'll just move over to Eline next, because you have sort of multiple hats on, with experience of pain, but also coming from a dance background and being a researcher as well. So I don't know if you want to respond to the topic today as well.
Sure, thank you. So I'll start with my perspective as a cultural anthropologist with a specialization in medical anthropology. So really looking at how people manage their health and well-being. And it's interesting to note that in many cultures in the world, there is a direct link between movement and life. And of course, as long as we're alive, we are moving. So even when we're stationary, our lungs are moving. You know, so that can be a really easy connection to movement if it feels like, oh, it's just that thing too much. Really be conscious of your lungs breathing in, expanding and breathing out. And with that, you have an immediate connection with the world around you through your breath. And so also metaphorically, we have a connection between movement of different parts of our psyche. So we might feel pain, but we equally might have emotions about it, or we might have thoughts about it. So again, using movement metaphorically to connect these different parts and in a way align the different parts of our experience that includes pain, but it's also much more than pain. It's also really helped us really seen in dance movement therapy as well, that sense of like we're all made up from different layers, and pain often zooms into like nothing else exists but the pain, because it can be so overwhelming. So in my journey as a person with an autoimmune condition, even the NHS recommends movement as the first medicine, which I really love. And I was really stunned by it first after I just received the diagnosis. But I really had to learn the difference between good pain and bad pain, because often what you hear first is like pain is a signal for the body to stop, you know, what Pete just said. But actually it's when we stop moving, the body freezes up, the joints kind of solidify, they freeze, and just giving a little bit of motion to the joints, to the tendons, to the muscles, that sort of keeps the energy moving in the body part that is hurting. So I really had to learn to play with that. And there are days when there's really that pain barrier, and the NHS recommends, like, if you are in too much pain to move, take a painkiller. And I was really struggling with that in the beginning. It's like, no, because my body is saying stop. I should not push beyond that pain barrier. But actually, I have learned on days that it's really bad to do that. And in that painkiller then helps me to address that fear of movement, that you can say, okay, I can breathe, the pain is still there, but it's not so overwhelming that I can't move with it. And then gently I start oiling the joints, as I call it, or lubricating the muscles, or whatever image you can play with. And then usually in the rest of the day, my body's intelligence takes over, and I feel I don't need the painkillers anymore. So I think from both my dance and my anthropology training, I really look at the life force energy inside us. And so how can movement stimulate that life force? And I went to Namibia, I would like to share that, a few years ago to dance with the Kalahari medicine people. And it's a very subtle movement that they start. They start rocking from the hips. It's like they lift the hips by moving the heels. So it's a real gentle rocking that starts from the heels and then sort of travels up into the body. And when I saw them doing it, and then later when I experienced it, it really felt like kickstarting the engine somehow. And it's a really gentle movement, but it gets the fire of the body moving, the energy of the body moving. And then you can let it travel up your spine, and somehow you feel, without a lot of movement, that you are still alive. And for me, that is really the joy of moving. And then from there, connecting, like I started with in the beginning, with the breath to the world around you. And there's so much incredible nature imagery. So I don't know if people did the audio practice that Lisa made for us. She draws on the image of the ocean, or the mist, morning mist rising of the fields. You know, it's like to connect our bodies with those natural images of nature being always in movement. That for me is really joyful and mostly possible, whatever level of pain I might experience.
Brilliant. Wow, thank you. That's so rich. And I was just noticing as you were speaking there, I wanted to join in this shimmering movement right up the top of my head. So thanks for that. So I'll just move over to Harbinder now as well. I wonder if you could respond to the theme today, especially coming from your work in psychology. What's your perspective on this?
Thank you, Emma, and good morning, everybody, as well. I'm so grateful to be a part of this panel, and hopefully what I'll bring today is my experience of a health psychologist, so really engaging in behaviour change, and also my own personal love of dance and movement, and actually how it's, you know, really helping in my own sort of managing my own health and well-being. So in terms of the psychological perspective, again, so hopefully I can bring in sort of my academic hat, as well as my experience of working with patients who have persistent pain. And from a psychological perspective, it's really trying to understand what causes the fear. So what are the thoughts behind the fear that cause the anxiety and the worry? I mean, it could be linked to, for example, past experiences. It could be linked to illness perceptions. It could be linked to the worry of making my body worse, really sort of negative or unhelpful terms attached to movement or attached to you know, using the body in different ways, which may actually trigger some pain, and that pain then could be perceived as a signal of more damage, or I'm actually getting worse. So I guess from the psychological perspective is trying to address those fears. And we know, like, there's a lot of research now emerging showing the benefits of movement, and not only in terms of the physical but also the mind. And I think one of the key things is bringing both entities together as a whole. So the mind and body are linked, and quite often with pain, it is a multifactorial condition. There are so many impacts. I think Pete already touched on that in terms of how it can really change someone's life, reduce their quality of life. You know, it can impact relationships, it can impact their ability to work, it can impact on their sleep, it can impact on their mood, their mind, and also their identity. You know, who am I now with this pain? My body has changed physically, and there could be a disconnect with the mind and the body. So with movement, it's bringing that together. And I think, you know, I love that point about breath, and sort of being in the moment, changing the relationship with pain, and building up that self-confidence to be able to move. So we know in terms of well-being and the benefits of pain and the joy it can bring, in addition to that, it can also bring about some level of acceptance of pain, and actually learning to live with your pain rather than the pain being something that is controlling you. And through movement, it's exploring how your body has adapted and changed, and you being in control again. So really working with people with pain to explore what control means to them, because that may have also changed. You know, how do I move my own body? What elements am I actually in control of now? And quite often that confidence is not there, but through movement, you can build on exploring that. And also, again, I guess from the psychological perspective, movement can be seen as a way of expression. So again, you know, through having pain, there may be impacts of not being able to express, living with what we call sometimes an invisible condition. No one can see your pain, but you can feel it every day. You're the only one that lives with it every day. So how do you express that in terms, and Emma, you touched on that communication with the healthcare professionals in my work, but it's also communication with the people around you. And sometimes that can lead to blockage within the body, you know, where you're not able to express exactly how you're feeling on a good day and on a bad day, because that's a reality of pain. But it's you having that relationship with yourself, that self-love almost, to be able to have the confidence to move. So, I mean, I think this webinar is absolutely fantastic, just to bring to the forefront the whole, you know, the idea of movement, and let's move away from sort of the negative or unhelpful terms which are attached to exercise. You know, it doesn't mean going into the gym and, you know, lifting lots of heavy weights. I mean, if that's your thing, that's great, but you know, it's doing what movement is for you. And this is so important at the time that we're in now with the pandemic. It couldn't have been more important. And from my own personal experience, I hurt my back at the beginning of lockdown, just from going from movement a lot through work to sitting at a desk at home. And I was on the floor for literally 5 days. I couldn't even get up to the room to sleep. And I went through all the process of, oh, this is it, you know, I've caused damage now to myself. What will I be able to do? I've got work to do, you know, I've got lots of things that I still need to carry on with. And the fear was there, and it's almost like I disconnected from myself, and I could see, I mean, I know all this intellectually, but I was like watching myself. But actually the one thing that got me through it was movement. And I started to explore, and actually this is the great thing about this pandemic. Actually, one of the positives that have come out of this is we're able to connect online with so many people and so many different expertise. And I got movement through connecting with people who were putting on sort of online classes and online other online events. And I have to say, it was the one thing that I think got me moving again. after that short sort of back pain incidents I had at the beginning of lockdown.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that, both personal and academic and professional kind of experience. Yeah, I think the pandemic is, I was just reading a paper yesterday about actually the big impact that's had on people who live with pain, you know, and just not being able to access the usual kind of exercise activities you would, but like you're pointing out as well, there's maybe other things you can access. So thanks. And yeah, just then on to Ross, who's the final panel member, who's you know, a physiotherapist. So if you want to turn on or unmute yourself. Ross, when you saw that title about the fear and joy of moving in relation to pain, what was your response as a physiotherapist?
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, so looking at it from a physio perspective, and obviously an academic perspective as well, it's interesting to hear what the other panelists talk about in terms of a balancing act between movement and pain. So I think one of the things that I found working with patients with chronic pain over the years is giving them the confidence to understand the benefits of movement. And like I said, I sort of trying to explain to them, it's almost like imagining it's like a seesaw, you know, so you want to be in a nice equilibrium, nice balance, yeah. So some days you might do a little bit too much and the balance goes one way, and another day you might do a little too little, not enough. So it's a bit of a kind of a boom and bust kind of scenario. So for example, you often have patients who they maybe feel that they're having a good day. So they decide, right, I'm going to do lots today. I'm going to clean the house. I'm going to do the shopping. And they feel great doing it. They get a real sort of buzz from it, an endorphin release. They're achieving something. And then unfortunately, maybe a few hours later, they start realizing that they've got pain in their back or they've got pain in their shoulder. And then, of course, they then end up the next day, oh, I can't do anything, and they're resting on the sofa all day. So it's a kind of a real balancing act between understanding what you can do as an individual. And I think with this whole concept of chronic pain, it is about the individual. There is no size fits all. I think with movement, because obviously as a physiotherapist, we advocate movement. There's lots of benefits for it. So for example, general benefits such as strengthening muscles. Pete talked about reducing stiffness, feeling more flexible, maintaining your general health. As Harbinder said, you know, your physical and your mental health, it's interlinked. Yeah. So if we improve our physical health, our mental health will improve. And we all know at the moment, the amount of time that people are generally spending inside, it isn't great for how you feel in terms of your mood. If you're always in one room, always in one position, because, you know, humans are meant to move. It can reduce stress. It can build confidence, obviously. So if there's a task that you can't do and you gradually work at it, and over a period of time, you manage to conquer that task, and obviously that improves your self-confidence. And surprisingly, people probably think, oh, if I'm doing more, surely it's going to make me more tired. Well, again, sort of getting back to what Pete mentioned, pacing is obviously a strategy that's recognized, and it is becoming more and more important. So by that, what we mean is pacing your activities. So we're not necessarily talking doing a sporting activity, we're talking daily activities, you know, so it could be doing the washing up, it could be doing hoovering, anything like that, pacing it to a level that's suitable for you, and also dependent on how you feel that day. And then obviously understanding other concepts such as what activities do you find most demanding, so you can then maybe plan your day in a logical way. Or if you're fortunate enough to have someone who can help you, you can then maybe delegate tasks that are a problem for you, again, so you don't do too much. I think basically what happens with a lot of the patients is they get into a fear avoidance pain cycle. So they have a fear of being in pain, and that actually develops changes in the central nervous system and the brain. So we have terms such as hyperalgesia, which is an increased pain response from a stimulus that normally causes pain. And you also have a term called allodynia, which is an abnormal pain response to something that doesn't normally cause pain. So probably one of the best examples I can give of that is I've met patients who say a text message going off on my mobile phone is painful. So to most people, that would not be a normal pain response, but to somebody with a heightened pain response, that can actually be painful. So I think one of the important things, as the other panelists mentioned with their pain experience, is breaking the cycle. So breaking the fear of actually moving, and that you're going to do something that's going to cause you harm. So I think one of the patient groups you often see a lot of this in is whiplash patients, particularly with neck problems. They maybe don't have a fantastic understanding of the anatomy of the neck, and they're worried that they're going to do really serious damage. If they move too much, they might not be able to walk. So I think a lot of the understanding of chronic pain is education, and educating the patient regarding challenging the reasons behind their fears. So why are they scared of the movement? And again, I think that's a very individual thing. And once you can overcome those sort of initial fears and show that nothing really bad is going to happen, then I think you can start to win their confidence. But it's also important, I think Pete mentioned about sets and reps and doing lots of sets and reps, and this is really painful. What's the point of this? And again, that's a good point. I think we need to probably move away, or we are moved away from that sort of sets and reps mentality, and it's more about what the individual can do in a certain time period. So using, for example, goal setting. So what physios often refer to as SMART goals, which are specific goals, measurable, achieve it, realistic, and targeted. So again, it doesn't have to be to do with sport. It could be something about, right, today I'm going to do the washing up. Nobody likes to do that, but I'm going to do the washing up for 5 minutes, and then another day I'm going to build it to 6 minutes, 7 minutes, etc. So just giving yourself little building blocks, little targets, and working through that, I think is the key.
Thanks for that. And it just so much came up there as well. I was thinking about what could be joyful targets, and say from that point of view, like often I focus more on the process. How am I enjoying this movement as opposed to where I'm getting to, or something like that. But we can come back to that. I suppose I see we have a very active chat, and we've Q&A coming in. So I think it would be really nice to hear what people have been saying. So Bernie, are there any questions there for the panel that have popped up you think are important to ask?
Yeah, we've got one question which I think is quite fundamental, that was asked by Sean Barnes. This is the first time they've heard the notion of somatic practitioner. So what does this mean? So we've sort of been talking about movement and somatics and practice.
Yeah.
So somebody on the panel could ask that, and then we have another couple of questions.
Yeah, I suppose I haven't focused too much on that, because I sort of had in mind this event to be broader, but it's notoriously difficult to describe. So I might call on Eline maybe to make an attempt. Do you want to try that?
Okay, I can try. So basically, somatic practices developed in the end 19th century and all throughout the 20th century. First, from a question of how does the body feel from inside? So what's the lived phenomenological experience of being in a body? And so there's soma, means the body. So it's really about working in an awareness of your body as a whole system. And then there's many, many different modalities. Perhaps you have heard of Alexander technique or Mensen-Dijk. They are often used for specific alignments, for posture, for breathing as well. And yeah, so there's lots of different lineages in which people work. But I think the biggest focus is increasing the individual's awareness of the body in order to work with it in a more harmonious way.
Yeah,
that would be my...
And I think for me as well, something really important is that you're facilitating movement rather than demonstrating it, maybe. So it's about someone's experience. So I might give you prompts of something to do. So like we'll talk later about Lisa's audio practice, giving you a prompt. What kind of fluids do you have in your body, and responding to that as opposed to me telling you exactly what to do, what movement. But maybe that could be a whole webinar in itself, so we can come back to that. Were there any other questions, Bernie?
Yeah, one from Anne Kingston. What do the panel think about pain management, blocking your relationship with pain and the ability of the body to be in touch with the pain in an embodied way? And she notes that she was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis at the age of 22. She's a mad keen dancer, and at 65 she's currently studying dance and somatic wellbeing at UCLan, University of Central Lancashire.
Brilliant. So say that question again.
Okay. What do the panel think about pain management, blocking your relationship with pain and the ability of your body to be in touch with pain? So that notion of getting rid of it by blocking it rather than embodying, living with the embodied experience. I think.
I can make a start if you like.
Sure.
So I also have ankylosing spondylitis, which is a condition on the rheumatoid spectrum, and it really blocks the supple movements of joints. So mainly lower back, but can also be ankles or wrists or joints or elbows. And like I said in my brief introduction, I am very hesitant to use painkillers because, like you said, it dampens the awareness. At the same time, if that is the only way I can keep moving, I do take them. You know, because I do think movement is so essential to our health and well-being that not moving is more detrimental than on occasion taking painkillers. And like Pete said, it also depends on where you are. It can be more aggravating at times in the day, at times in the year. So I don't think we need to be, yes, we need to be cautious with painkillers, but at the same time not deny ourselves the possibility to move if we can use some of them. Okay. Yes, that would be my take on it.
Did anyone else on the panel want to comment on that question? Yeah, Harbinder.
Yeah, I just thought, so I guess in terms of pain management, we very much apply a biopsychosocial perspective. So it's really not, you know, the aim, I guess, is not really to block the pain, but to live better with the pain. So rather than the pain controlling every aspect of life, it's you being in control. And it comes back down to, I guess, that self-confidence again. And yeah, I guess in terms of the painkillers, that's a really interesting point. And part of my work is also around helping people reduce the reliance on strong painkillers such as opioids. But it's a really important point to make that for every individual is weighing up the risks and the harms with the benefits of taking painkillers. And you making that decision yourself as to, you know, how much you need, and if small doses are needed to function and be able to get on and do things, then, you know, that's okay with you. But to always, you know, discuss that with your healthcare professionals, to, you know, get a plan which is helpful for you. But I guess with the movement and the dance, it's a non-pharmacological management technique. It doesn't have the side effects compared to being heavily reliant, let's say, on painkillers. But I think it's always coming back down to what works for you. And and not being scared to, I guess, explore those questions with your clinicians, you know, whether it's about painkillers or, I mean, I know there's a lot more research, there's a lot more coming out now to help both clinicians and patients change their relationships with painkillers. So I'm hopeful that we're now in a place where pain management in itself is changing, and there's a bigger push for non-pharmacological ways to manage it. But we're also aware that for that to happen, these non-pharmacological things need to be in place. You know, so your clinicians have got something to offer or to some advice to give you, rather than going straight to the medication route.
Yeah, Pete, go for it.
Yeah, one of the, that's a great question as well. The pain management programs, or the ones that I'm aware of, is that it's not about blocking, it's about learning to live with pain. I mean, I've been using a hashtag best part of a year now called self-management living. And that's what pain management programs are about. It's getting on with your life, getting yourself back in the driving seat, in spite of having pain. You know, listen, I'm not pain free. What I do is I use skills and techniques that I've learned over the years to keep all my pain levels down, to enable me to get on with life. You know, and you know, Harbinder was talking about this medication business. You know, the reason why, there's two reasons actually. One of the reasons why we've got this massive problem in the UK, we've got, I won't bore you with too many statistics, but it's two I use, is there's 28 million people living with pain in the UK, 28 million, and 500,000 stuck on opioids. Now, you know, opioids are, as far as I know, I'm not a medical dude, but from my understanding of it, is that they wasn't designed for non-cancer pain, like, you know, but they're given, the prescribers have to give them out because one of the problems, there aren't enough Harbinders around, ain't enough Rosses around, you know, because they're in, when I was tweeting about this yesterday, you know, it's GPs and other prescribers are stuck because there's nowhere in the community for them to signpost people to learn about self-management stuff. There's not enough online stuff. I mean, it's just fantastic what you're doing today, but it's not. So they're stuck. So the only option the prescriber's got is to start, giving out the pills and whatnot. So, and one last point: when medical schools start teaching their students about the importance of self-management, that will be a massive plus as well, because, you know, I think there's a shift going on, but not all medical schools, they're still teaching them the medical model, you know, for pain, which is, what are we going to do to you? What will you give to you and whatnot? You know, and you know what, the medical model is fantastic, but not for us lot, you know, for people with pain. They need to learn, they need to be teaching, the medical schools need to be having a part of their curriculum, the importance of pain self-management, but it ain't there at the moment. Yeah, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime, and hopefully it'll happen in yours, Emma, but you know, where it is shifting. I was teaching down in Wales a couple of years ago, teaching the actual lecturers about the importance of self-management. So they're now teaching their student nurses the importance of teaching self-management to their patients that you see, but also they learn about self-management for themselves, because as you know, in nursing, there's a massive problem with back pain and whatnot. And I just want to give a shout out actually, because this year is back pain year for the International Association for Study of Pain. Well, each year they choose a pain problem, and this year they've chosen back pain. So there's lots of things going on around the world to heighten this problem about back pain, but more importantly, how to keep the messages really nice and simple for back pain, you know, people that live with back pain and whatnot, about the importance of self-management.
Thank you, Pete. Yeah, so we were covering everything from opioids to self-management, to sort of finding ways not to block the pain, but be aware of it. I'm just aware of time, so we were going to have a little pacing break. Ross, did you want to say something just before we do that?
Yeah, just very quickly. I think one of the important things is it's all about the individual, and it might be the use of pain medication might be an opportunity to unlock some potential for them to start moving and to start reducing that fear. I think from a physio perspective, it's also important to understand if the pain we're dealing with is still the chronic pain, or is there a new acute pain that's developed on top of that chronic pain. So often, obviously, as physiotherapists, we want to use our hands to treat the patient and obviously touch the patient. And you can sometimes find that some patients, even just the lightest sort of touch with fingertips is just not possible. So I often think, you know, in this kind of scenario, we need to find a way to sort of break that if we can. And sometimes medication can be the answer to that. But I think, as Harbinder was saying, probably the best thing is it needs to be a multidisciplinary approach. So, you know, you need to be having a dialogue with a pain specialist, with other people with experience of chronic pain. I think, unfortunately, some people do get in a position where they're just receiving medication from the GP. It's repeat prescription. There's no real review going on. Nobody actually knows if this person's improving or changing. Has their life circumstances changed? So I think it's all about the individual again. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So I know there's lots of questions and comments, but I would like to give people a chance to have a little break to move and grab a drink or whatever you need to do. So when we come back, I might actually ask Sarah to come in just for a minute and give a sort of a recap of some of the chat, like anything that stands out, and then we'll move straight into talking with Lisa more specifically about dance and movement, and with all the panel. So we'll be back at 11. So do what you need to do now, and I'll see you back then. Thank you. Sarah, were there any things from the chat you wanted to sort of point out?
Absolutely, yeah. So there are a few things. One, quite a few people, after what Harbinder was saying, said that the characterization of restriction of movement as a restriction of expression was simple yet profound to them. It kind of allowed them to conceptualize things in a new way. It's a feeling that they had, but you know, that's a really nice, profound way of saying it. Others have noted that there's also an unfortunate cultural baggage that comes with being in pain, where people perceive you as being weak instead of you know, someone who's suffering. And that can be not just a cultural baggage around you, but something because you've grown up in a culture that way, that you have an internalized feeling of weakness. Also, Ross's description of this boom and bust feeling, people resonated with that quite a lot. There were quite a lot of bits in the chat talking about how that kind of resonated with them or described them. And there was, of course, Eline, a lot of people talking about what Eline said there, how even when they're sitting still, you know, they're theoretically still, they're still moving, they're still breathing, you know, there are parts of their body still in movement. And Peter providing links into the comment section has been helpful. Some people have been clicking those links. Oh, that's okay. Some people have been clicking those links and they've been finding them very useful. So, you know, it's good that you've done that and people have found them quite useful. So that's a lot of what's been coming from the chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sarah, for that summary. So thanks everyone for that, and it also helps us get new ideas for webinars. So if there's things you want to see, like, we really are happy to hear about that. So thanks, Sarah. So just to come back to the panel now, we can say goodbye to your video, and we have Lisa there. Alina has just commented her internet is a bit unstable. She's still on there, but she's on the audio, so we'll see how that goes. So welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much. Oh, you're still on mute there. We asked you to create an audio practice because obviously if this was an in-person event, we'd have practical workshops, and that's a really important part of it. So, you know, obviously there's just challenges trying to make this work for an online format. So I just really enjoyed what you made. So I don't know if you wanted to comment a little bit about the audio practice you made and its relation to the theme or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, hello everybody. So my experience is in working with children and young people with pain in hospital, and generally I work one-to-one and with touch. So when I was invited to make an audio practice, that was a little bit of a challenge, had to think about that a little bit. But when I work with children in pain, like everybody has said, there's a lot of fear around moving. So children generally think that if they move, their pain will increase. So my job really is to try and bridge that gap between stillness and moving. And one of the things that I do spend quite a lot of time doing is in the stillness, so really exploring the stillness. So often people in pain, they might be in quite a high tone state. So my job is really to try and explore how we can decrease the tone, so bringing them into a more relaxed state so that movement might be a possibility. So with a one-to-one session, I would generally do that with touch, and I do work, I wouldn't talk through the fluid system with the children that I work with, but I do work with the fluid system myself and how I touch the children. So I'm not sure what information came with the audio practice, but my somatic practice is the training I've done is in body mind centering. So this work really comes from that. And I would begin with what we would call in body mind centering a cellular touch. So I would embody that state of cellular fluid that I talk through in the audio practice, and the sense of breathing and cellular breathing, and I would bring that quality to the children through touch. And I would stay there as long as I need to stay there. So again, this idea of pacing and the individual, I might be there for the whole session. We might not visibly go into moving or dancing, so that would depend on how the child responds and what happens with them. So then from the stillness, the transition into moving is also something that I pay a lot of attention to. And then when the child begins to move or softens in some way, like lets go of tension in the body, I would kind of follow, respond, invite. So really that's what I was trying to do with the audio practice, which is interesting because obviously I'm not seeing what's happening in people's spaces, so that kind of sense of improvising and following isn't there. But yeah, that was the idea underneath. And I think with the fluid system, because the different qualities of the fluids, it just gives a lot of choice, and that's really important to my work as well, that it's children who lead, and it's children who have the choice and control in what is going to happen in the session. So
brilliant.
That's what I was aiming for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I wanted to ask the panel about is, you know, well, I hope everyone, maybe not everyone got a chance to do the practice, but if you did, I was wondering what kind of movement came out of it for you, because obviously this is quite different from you know, other kinds of exercise program you might have to manage your pain. So I don't know, would someone like to start off there with a comment on their experience of what movement happened for them in the audio practice? Anyone hands up? Yeah. How about Harbinder? Yeah.
It was a really, really lovely practice, Lisa. And actually, I probably didn't realize how much tension I was carrying around my neck and shoulders. So as I started to do the movement, and I recall one part of it where you said it could be the smallest of movements, or you could be quite, you know, you might need the space. And actually I was doing quite small movements, but really just around rolling my shoulders and just moving my neck and just allowing some of that tension to release. And I guess that some of it's probably due to my sort of working pattern of sitting at a computer desk most of the day, but it was just nice. I felt that was where I connected more with.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. I think Alina managed to do it. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, similarly for me, it was a very meditative internal movement. So I was seated for one time and I was laying down for another time. And so for me, it was more of an invitation in the imagination almost. And it's funny because even now I'm speaking, I'm starting to salivate that sense of connection to the fluids in the body. It's not something that we are often drawing our attention to. And then for me, it really connects with the image of water, which came back in the meditation, in the guidance a few times as well, that sense of fluidity and flow, which for me is interesting because I'm learning to teach Qigong. And it's very much an invitation to bring the motion in, like, yeah, a flow of life, a river flowing through you. So that really was a different way into the fluid system for me. So yeah, very juicy. Thank you.
Yes, I did it a few times as well. And I was really noticing how I found it hard to be in stillness, you know, so that the image of the lake, still lake, you know, actually was very helpful because I was flowing around the place, you know, like waves. And so that was really interesting, that kind of fluid, that still sort of, and how to be still without being stiff, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did Pete or Ross want to say anything? You don't have to. No.
Me personally, I'll just move every day anyway. So,
yeah.
I wasn't on your practice run, so I'm always for just trying out new things, new dance moves.
Yeah. Well,
and stuff like that. You know, I'm a watcher, like, you know, so I tend to watch. I learn things from watching other people. So, and I'm always sort of watching things on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that. So, you know, but you know, I officially become an older person a few years ago, and I don't see myself as an older person yet. I think, you know, but it inspires me when I see people older than me having a bop around, you know, and because it's fun, you know. I think I don't know about what your feelings are on it, Ross, but I think you know, and I think you mentioned on it earlier, like, you know, it's all this back in the day, like, you know, it's always prescriptive, like exercises and stretching, but you know, watching healthcare professionals on the social media now, they've moved away from this prescriptive stuff and moving more into what you guys are talking about, you know, about dance, etc., and things like actually making movement fun. You know, because I mean, I like the gym. I'm a gym dude. I quite like that, but I'm aware that other people ain't, you know, really ain't into that. But you know, the thing about self-management, or supported self-management, I should say, it's about self-discovery. You know, you know, you learn something and that's it. You know, it's because as you get older, as your body changes and stuff like that, you know, it's about discovering ways on doing new things, perhaps doing things that you've given up but want to get back to, like, you know. So it involves that, I think what Ross talked about, you know, setting goals, action plans and whatnot, you know. You know what, it's all, yeah, I've got pain, but hey, let's have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting when you had the story about dancing at the pain conference, you know, and you know, that wasn't a goal, it was just for the joy of it. Do you know what I mean? So
the Aussies are wild, you know, so you couldn't just sit there, like, you know. I mean, I was a bit of a shy guy, but when the Fiona, the president, she said, "Oh wait, you know, when the music starts, everybody's going to race up." I thought, "Oh my God, no, don't do that." And it was as soon as the music started, everyone got off their seats and that was on the dance floor, and I was sort of sitting there thinking, "Oh my God," you know. But you know what? I got in the groove of it all. You know, it's really time of my life, you know. And that, for me, that day was my exercise routine, you know.
Yeah. And I was wondering as well if the panel might, if anyone has anything to say about, like, what would there be challenges of introducing dance, or, you know, the kind of movement practices that Lisa was sharing into current pain management are the things we'd need to think about in doing that. So I don't know if anyone has a comment on that. Yeah, Harbinder.
Yes, definitely. I think from my experiences of delivering pain management programs, quite often if we're doing any sort of practice, whether it's a mindfulness practice or some sort of movement, some of the comments or some of the sort of phrases I hear is, oh, I can't do that, or I can't focus on my breath. And that could be because it's not been tried before, or again linked to that worry and fear of what will happen if I do start to move or start to focus on the breath. And sometimes that emotion of anxiety and worry, it's, as Ross said earlier, you're in that cycle then of not being able to move or to practice this way because you're so anxious. Your body is more sensitive to almost the environment around you. So what I tend to say is, by creating a safe environment, have a go, practice, but listen to your body and be in control and modify as you need to. And even sort of when we're doing any sort of mindfulness practice, for example, it's if you need to move, if you need to change your position, that's okay. It's that mind-body link again. And I sometimes say that, and I don't know what other panel members think about this, but you know, like anything else, this is a skill. So the more you practice and the more you learn, and the more you allow yourself to, you know, to try, there's no right or wrong, there's no failure. Hopefully that will increase the confidence and you'll get to see the benefit. So what motivates is when we start to feel the reward, that joy, the, you know, any sort of benefits in any way on our life, whether it's physical, mind, that's what will help continue to try.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and Ross, because I know as well you've had various experiences of somatic movement and dance in the network as well. So I was wondering, yeah, about do you think there'd be challenges introducing that into, you know, with physios or in pain programs?
I think obviously one of the important things is having a suitable environment. So I think an environment where people can feel relaxed. Now, obviously that can be different for each individual, but generally people need somewhere where they feel comfortable and that there's no, you know, excessive noise and stress in the environment. So I think sometimes a hospital environment isn't always conducive to that. So I think there's a real opportunity for different professions, different people to get involved, and in association with NHS, etc., to run this type of program. You know, it doesn't have to be hospital based. I think obviously in the past I've been involved with some fibromyalgia self-help groups, which I think have been really useful for people when they can come together as a group and share experiences and share resources. So I think the key thing is finding out what suits people in terms of an environment. And I do think that the somatic practice is really useful for people to learn about their own bodies. You know, I think sometimes as a physio, you can have a kind of your own view about movement and touch, which is, you know, can be based a lot on your training. So for me, it's been an interesting experience to try and step away a little bit from that. And when I've actually engaged in the somatic practice myself, try and take myself outside of that normal mindset. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. I don't know, Bernie, if there's any questions have been coming in for Lisa about the practice or about to the panel members.
There's not been specific questions. I think everybody's just been putting really delightful comments on the chat. So it's basically sort of super positive comments. The one question, if I can find it here, Yeah, it kind of links to the notion that finding a language that we can use to share the ideas that we talk about when we're talking about these sorts of practices with people who work in a more traditional or more medical model type of way. Because I think some of the things, for those of us that have experienced this practice, we understand what it's about, but if you try and talk to somebody who comes from a different disciplinary background or a more traditional medical model background, it's quite hard to say why that was a really positive experience or why it was a really good experience. It's kind of more maybe of a statement than a question.
It's a good comment. I don't know, Lisa, if you have something to say about that, because you work in hospital settings. So what sort of a language are you using there?
Well, I started, it was a bit of an experimental project, and I wasn't necessarily working with people with children with pain, and I'm part of the Arts for Health team, so I was in as a dancer. But obviously I'm an improviser and a somatic movement educator, so that's my way of dancing. So I was called lots of interesting things like the relaxation nurse and all different kinds of, written up in the notes, the relaxation nurse came today, and I was like, whoa, like lots of tickle therapy, like all kinds of, I think they had quite a giggle around me, but because I was kind of in there, the work spoke for itself. So the feedback, for example, from the physios was that it was easier to do the physiotherapy sessions after the children had worked with me. Even the nurses said it was easier to dress the children, you know, practical day-to-day things. So I've always been quite well supported, and the pain team at the hospital have referred several patients to us. And they do call us the somatic dance practitioners now. And, you know, they understand that we work with touch and listening to the body. Those are the kinds of things I say. Obviously, when I go to meet a child, it's to explain it to them. It's like another language, or I would say, oh, I've worked with children before who've been in quite a lot of pain like you. Sometimes this helps, you know, we can try, you can say no at any point, or, you know, I always give them a way out. And but yeah, when I've written up papers, and there's one of the nurses who's part of the pain team who has read things, she's kind of said to me, oh, that sounds a bit hocus pocus, you know, how else can we say that, so that, because I was writing for a nursing journal, so that they would understand. So, but yeah, they've always been really helpful in finding a language that still resonated with me but would make sense in a medical context. So I think it's just talking to people like Bernie and Ross and Harbinder who work in health. You know, maybe we can't describe it exactly as we would to other dance practitioners, but just finding that language that speaks to everybody.
Yeah, that would be one fear I have, that people just think, you know, exercise sounds serious, but dance, you know, it's just an add-on or something, rather than understanding there's a lot to it. You're nodding there, Pete. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about that. Oh, you might need to unmute.
That would really help. Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, to me, it's been a fantastic session, and the old cogwheels are starting to whiz around, and I'm just sort of thinking, you know, we need to involve dance a bit more in pain management. You know what, living's all about having fun, like, you know, and I think it's about how do we get people moving, you know. You know, we said from the beginning, like, you know, the fear that we have. I mean, I had it massively, you know. I mean, I'm still a bit of a chubby dude now, like, you know, but back in the day I was massive, like, you know, because I just didn't move, you know, the fear of movement, because I was of that thinking that, you know, movement, exercise, etc., that increased pain sort of thing, you know. So I don't know what, it's massive thumbs up for me, really, for how we can even develop a pain management program around dance, you know. I mean, online, you know, because listen, you know, this this online business is not, it's not like here today, gone tomorrow. This is going to be pretty much the norm, I think, for the future, you know, and I think we need to embrace it. You know, what about these poor devils out there who live with pain, who can't get to a pain management program, you know, may live in a rural area, may have mobility problems, transport challenges and whatnot. You know, to me, you know, it's about how we, I'm not saying we don't do face-to-face stuff, but I think we need to embrace this online concept. But how do we do it? How can we develop an online program? Doesn't have to be a massive one, a short program, but encourages people. Perhaps their action plan is to find out a movement, an exercise, you know, a dance, a routine, or something that suits them. You know, what do they do? Why do they do it? Did it make you feel better? How did you feel afterwards? You know, but it's about, listen, people learn from each other. You know, so I mean, I'm watching all the traffic here, on the chat traffic here today. I mean, a massive amount of information going on here. It needs to be shared, you know. So it's about how do we use this sort of format, bring everybody together, because that's how people learn from each other. I mean, when I worked in the expert patients program, you know, for people with long-term conditions, all the learning was amongst themselves. It wasn't the tutors were really just signposters. They're, you know, they were just like the cops really, signposting people. But it always amazes me how people learn from each other. We need to really look at this. I want to work with you on this one, Emma.
Yay! Let's do it. Thank you so much. Yeah, and it's amazing with the chat, and I think you're right. I hope, because we haven't got around to every comment or question, that people are learning from each other and sharing together and create their own conversations together and exchanges. I'm just aware of time. We did have one other poll, which I'd like to share with people, which is about the joy of moving. So I might ask Kozer to bring that up. So I was just curious as to how joyful people feel when they move. And I know we have a very mixed group of people here, from dance artists to healthcare to people who live with pain and so on. So I know sometimes these scales can be hard to pick because every day is different, but maybe pick for today. I feel joyful when I'm moving all the time, frequently, sometimes, rarely, never. We're getting quite good results at the moment. There's no one saying they never feel joy when they're moving. So that's really nice to see. So while that's going on, I do have lots of thank yous to say. There's Pete's doing some movements, so you can do some moving. I really want to thank all the panel members who've been fantastic and brought different perspectives. I would like to thank Lisa for the audio and all of the organising team. It's been amazing. And there's been Bernie Kozer's been doing a big job there, as well as Sarah, and also Lily Hayward Smith, who was looking after the registration, and everyone who's sort of been in this, developing these ideas around dance, somatic practices and chronic pain. We really appreciate all the input you've had. So that's kind of it from me. I don't know, Bernie, was there any other comment you wanted to make, or something from the Q&A or the chat before we go?
No, I mean, there was one question about people's values and experiences, but I think that has actually been responded to in the chat, where people are sharing those things that they hold dear and they think are important. I mean, to me, it's just been a wonderful, warm and engaging space that it feels that people have enjoyed. So that is something that I think when we first conceived this as an idea, we wanted to make it a safe and inspiring place for people to be. And from the comments that we've got, it feels like the panelists and the people that have attended have helped us realise that dream. So yeah. And Sarah, you had your hand up there.
Yes, so just to recap a few things from this section of chat. So a lot of people talking very positively about Lisa's practice, saying it was specifically a lot of the language that she used, talking about, pancake batter or lying in the sand or the mist. This imagery was really helpful in getting them to a space where they could really feel the fluidity of their movement, or getting centered or feeling more relaxed. In terms of other stuff, a lot of people have been, just engaging with one another, which has been really positive to see. And some have even asked if it's possible to kind of continue this after the event. And I don't know if we have any plans for that, but it would be interesting to see if we could set something up where people could have this kind of conversation in future, because there is a lot of very, very interesting crosstalk, not just between the panelists, but people who are attending in chat, and all of them having from such, as we saw at the start, very varied backgrounds, and it's just very interesting to see.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have funding from the AHRC until July, and what happens after that we don't know. But please keep an eye on our website and our social media. We're going to create a series of videos that people can try at home. And I'm just going to close the poll now, or maybe Kozer can do that. And so we've got that people feel joyful when moving frequently is the top, and then all the time, sometimes, and then we have some rarely, but nobody never. So that's something. So yeah, please keep an eye on us on the website, and we hope to run more events. When you leave the webinar, you get a link to a questionnaire, so you can leave ideas about other events you want to see, and comments about this. So yeah, Sarah.
I just want to let people know we will be saving the chat as well, so we can, if people want, we can obviously make it all anonymous. We can scrub names and have it so that people can see what was spoken about if they wish.
Yeah, we're going to put the recording probably on the website. We just need to figure out how to do that, so that'll be out there soon. So thank you, everyone. I hope I haven't missed anyone. Thank you, Kozer. We may want to see your video again if you want to join us to do our final wave. So thank you, everyone. All right, have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.